Good evening, fellow live steamers. For tonight's program, I'd like to borrow from Public Broadcasting Corporation's format and give you a background report before we get into signals and train operation. Train, either freight or local, is made up in the yard by switching crews, usually with blocks of cars kept in station order to facilitate the work on line. I was fortunate enough to start railroading during the steam era, and I've seen the many changes that have come along in the last 40 years. Trains used to arrive in the yard, and the yard clerk, known as a mud hop, for good reason, he walked the train and made a handwritten list of the cars, and then he would tag each car with a tag, had a tag number which corresponded to the destination of that car. Switch crew would then switch out the cars by these tag numbers. Of course, that was a very slow and time-consuming project. The term tag number still persists, but now corresponds to the permanent number on the side of the car. The list is computerized so that the switch crew can look at the car number and know from their list where the car number is going. And so there's not the, sometimes a train will be switched within minutes after arrival. Everything is computerized. As far as the SP operation, most of the switching is now done in big hump yards. The train is shoved over a hump where the cars can be cut off in motion. They use the momentum generated from the crest of the hump to roll into the proper classification tracks. They are then picked up from these tracks in a predetermined order to make up a train. So much for the backgrounder. This evening I just want to show you how railroad crews talk to each other using hand and light signals. Rule 7 in our 850 rule book pertains particularly to signals. It states in part that signals must be clearly given and such a manner that they're given in such a manner they cannot be misunderstood. Hand signals are used from daylight to dark, and light signals are used during hours of darkness and or limited visibility. The disappearance from view of a person giving signals must be construed as a stop signal. That's an absolute. You lose sight of the person giving the signals, you have to stop. Because he may have fallen down, maybe his light burned out at night. It's just a written part of the rule that, and it makes sense. You're not controlling the move, you're being controlled. So you have to make the move by the signals. And if you lose your man, naturally you got to stop. Engineers must also know that signals that are given to him are for him and not for another train or engine. In Stockton, where I currently work on a switch engine, we receive and deliver blocks of cars to and from 3 different directions on the SP, as well as interchange with the 2 other major railroads, 2 short line railroads, and the Stockton Belt Railroad. We do not have the luxury of a hump, but we still use the same procedures. The cars are switched by momentum generated by the engine. It's up to the foreman, or conductor as we know him, to judge the speed necessary to roll the cars into the various classification tracks, and he conveys this to the engineer by hand signals. Or if he or one of the other crew members is too far from the engine, they can use their radio, their pocket radio. Looks like this. In fact, this is one. But they're only allowed to use the radio when hand signals cannot be plainly seen. An average cut of cars that we switch is usually 15 to 20 cars, and you're talking about a length of about 750 to 1,000 feet. So they may use the radio for the first few moves until the engine gets close enough to them, then they'll switch over and use hand signals. Now we get into what we're talking about. The tracks are numbered usually starting from the main line and proceeding down a lead or drill track. Well, we use this signal for the main line. This is a standard mainline signal. This means mainline. If somebody gives you this, you know he means mainline. This is a signal for the lead. Just a quick, because the lead leads off to the left, or maybe it leads to the right. They also use a drill. It's sometimes called a drill track. They use a hand drill sign. If you start with signal track number 1, 2, track number 3, track number 4, 5, 6, 7 is always shaking the dice. I don't know where they got that, but railroad guys. Anyway, 8 is under the arm, 9 is on top of the arm, and 10 is 10 from, and after 10 they repeat. 10, 1, 10, 2. But these signals are usually interpreted by me and not given by me, so I hope you'll bear with me on the giving of these signals. But anyway, they also have a lot of names for tracks. Some of the names got edited out by my wife in her review of it. So I'll have to give you the ones that she let me leave in. Anyway, this is a signal for house. There's always a house track, which usually by the depot is 2 rafters. Makes sense. Team track was a track that you could drive up to with a team of horses and unload originally, and of course now you can unload there on trucks. Well, that signal for team track is just holding the reins of the horses. That's signal for team. Everybody knows that. We used to have corral tracks with unloading sheds, unloading pens for unloading stock. That's always a pair of horns. Okay, everybody, when he gives you this, you know he's brakeman, you know he's headed for the corral track. Nearly every yard has a middle track. They have a back track, transfer track. That's a track to transfer cars to another railroad. Crossover. It's a crossover to the main line, or maybe across the main line in some instances. Rip track, bad order cars, signal for a rip track. Scale is, there's a scale for weighing the cars for revenue purposes. Loads have to be weighed, sometimes for the charges. That's a few of the named tracks. Some of the standard switching moves that we have, of course, I suppose the most important is a stop signal. This is a stop signal. Always given at right angles to the track. It can be given facing the engineer or facing away from him. Still reads the same. Come ahead, come towards me, back up, go away from me. These are signals that are daytime signals. Faster they give the signal, faster they want you to go away from them or come towards them. Let's see, where are we at here? Pin. This means give me a pin. Give me the slack so I can pull a pin between the cars. That's just a little jiggle of the thumb. Means that in spite of what you see in the movies where the guy reaches down and pulls the pin and lets the last car roll back down the hill, it can't happen. You have to have, of course, and I think we know that around here, you have to have slack. You cannot pull that pin there locked tight. They're designed that way. You cannot pull a pin without getting a little slack. So that's what the pin sign means. Kick signal. This is when they're kicking a car down the main line, one or more. They give you this kick sign, then the engineer opens the throttle and accelerates until they stop, because it's up to them to judge the speed. It's not up to you. They will judge the speed that they want the car to go. You may have a hold of 20 and they're only letting 1 or 2 go, but they're the ones who judge the speed. If you shut off before they want you to, the pin may drop. So it has a purpose. Shove. Maybe they're not going to kick them. Maybe they're going to shove them in the clear. This means shove. Shove it to clear. Shove to clear the lead. Shove to clear track 7. You can say whole sentences with you. Never say a word. Chris doesn't believe it. He's laughing because he. Oh, I know that. But you after a while. Dirty old man. All railroaders are like that. Anyway, let's back to my written text here.
If you don't understand the signal, how do you convey back to him that you didn't understand?
Oh, that you don't understand the signal?
Yeah.
Well, then use the whistle. You can give him 4 blasts on the whistle, means call for signals. Yeah. Yeah. If you didn't, say you were looking away and you only caught half of it, you know. If you don't move, he'll give you another one right away. Asleep again, you know.
What's that say? Sleep again?
We got one for that. That's not in the text. I left that out. Okay, see, you got me all lost here now. Okay, they give you a signal. Reach in and pull the track. Pull track 7. Reach and pull track 5. Cut off. Cut the engine off. Cut off 1 car. Cut off 2 cars. They use these signals mostly between the two, the foreman and the brakeman, giving him a sign, although he has a list too, which I'll show you a list later, but the foreman is always watching his help, see if they're cutting off the right number of cars. You might give him a sign to cut off 2. The guy's getting ready to cut off 3, you know, one will go on the wrong track. Okay. And this means line the switch. Just a simple little circle. Line the switch ahead. Line the switch behind. Maybe they want you to line the switch behind the engine. And we have some other very important signals. Go to coffee. Both hands, go eat. Get serious now. Go to beans. Go to beans on a railroad means to go eat. Go on spot. Also, you may be switching an industry. This isn't all just switching out cars and putting them in different tracks. We have industries around Stockton too, and they use signals to go into a track and take you down to a joint. You may have a whole 6 or 8 cars, and they usually 150 feet from the joint. They will give you the first easy sign. Then they get serious with the second easy sign, and the third easy sign is always like this. They're on the ground by this time walking, and then they'll stop you hopefully as the pin drops. There may be a car in this industry that's not fully loaded and braced. They'll give you this sign. Baby load. Handle it with care. These can almost all be given with a light too. I happen to have enough seniority now I don't have to work at night much anymore, but this is the basic switchman's tool for giving signals at night. Basically, they're the same. Come ahead. The only thing you have to know is which way the engine is facing now, because the up and down means to come ahead with the engine. In other words, move the engine forward. People can't tell for sure which end of the engine is front or back. You always find an F on the front. You look at any locomotive, there's an F on the front. It says this is the front, dummy. Anyway, this means come ahead. And this means to back up. Same applies. You have to back, you're going to back the engine up. The speed that it's given, that's the speed they want you to back up. Kick sign, if it's a kick ahead, it'll be a circle and then a slash. If the engine's backing up, a kick sign is just a big circle. Pin sign, they give a little pin. They give numbers, 1, 2, 3, and 5 is a circle. 5, 10 is a double circle. Yeah, that helps. Thanks, Chris. But you can see this light doesn't look very bright until you turn the lights off. Now if you're in the dark, this light, they may be 20 cars away and you can still see that signal, although I'll get away from the table so I don't knock it down, but they would give a come ahead sign like that. And they would give a backup sign at least that big around, so that there's no doubt in the engineer's mind what they are indicating. Okay, I'll need the light back, Chris. Thank you. That's about all I have on switching movements, but train movement signals incorporate many of the same signals, and I should note that neither train nor engine is ever moved without a proper signal. This is a very rigid safety rule, and of course that's strictly enforced. Hal?
With the light, what happens when the signalman gives the signal and then he's at rest? You turn the light out? Or
No, he leaves it on all the time.
it hangs by side?
Yeah. If you can't see that light, you stop. If his light burns out, of course they have an extra one, but that's a spot light. And it's more for when they're trying to go into a track and they're trying to see what's ahead of the track, because that's all they've got. They haven't got that big bright headlight that I have. They have to use that light on the end of a car to try to see what may be on the track. But that's the reason for this cage around it. And they always have to hold it so that the engineer can see it. But if the engineer can't see that light, it's got to stop. So they leave it on all the time. It has a standard 6-volt battery that the company furnishes. They use, usually if they work the full 8 hours, they'll use one of those batteries in a shift. But they get they're actually a, no, they're throwaways. That they're a commercial type battery, and they're not as good a battery as you might buy for $2.95, to put in your lantern. These won't last as long as those. They're not guaranteed not to put acid in your battery either. Yeah. Yeah, they put a new battery when they start the shift. Yeah. Yeah.
Can I ask you one question?
Sure.
Suppose you're behind the cut of cars,
Uh-huh.
and you're moving down on some other car. And of course, you can't, around the boxcar a lot of times you can't see.
Around a curve.
Yeah, your switchman is out to the side. But what is the signal for one car?
One car?
One car left.
Like that. Just one. Yeah. It can be one. It can in whatever it may be one track number one, or it may be one car length, depending on the situation. And sometimes they'll give it like this, but it's just one move for one car length. One car length's pretty short, 50 feet. Yeah, you're right. You're close. Yeah. But they usually have at least 2 men on the crew, so that one man is near the end of the cut and one man may be on the curve. That's one thing that is very hard for a switchman to learn. Any new man, which we very seldom have any new men anymore, but where to be in position, how to stay in position so that you can see the engine and the other man on the crew. I don't mind being interrupted. If anybody has questions, that's great, because I'm almost finished here. Train movement signals incorporate many of the same switching signals. Okay, bear with me. I've read that paragraph. What I mean by the safety rule as far as moving the engine, you never move the engine unless you're instructed to move it, because somebody might possibly be in a position where you get hurt. That's the reason for that rigid safety rule. And it's enforced not only by the company, but by the guys you're working with. They'll let you know in a hurry that you moved without a signal, which we don't do. But anyway, a highball signal is everybody's heard of a highball signal. It's usually a circle with a slash. with a light. It's a circle like this and a slash, or it's a signal like this. But highball started out, dates from early railroad practice of giving a train right away through a station, right to pass through a station and onto the next station by moving a suspended ball. You move this suspended ball to the top or high position on the station mast. There was a mast in front of the station. We have one up at Tilden that Clyde Johnson made. It doesn't work like he thought it would, but it gives you the idea. Anyway, when the ball was in the high position, you could highball through that station. You didn't have to stop. You could go on to the next station. The ball was in the low position, the train had to stop. And it was their early way of controlling traffic on single track so the trains didn't go out there in between stations and run into each other. Big problem when they first started. Not much of a problem anymore, but still happens. It's very disastrous when one train runs head-on into another train. Not very forgiving. But anyway, when the ball was in the low position, the train had to stop, could not leave that station until the cleared by the station operator. And of course, he would be in touch with the dispatcher. So anyway, the ball in the higher, the top position has become a universal railroad signal for highball. In other words, it's used for okay, everything's okay, it's okay to depart, it's okay to proceed, to resume speed after a restriction. It's really just a universal signal. When we had cabooses, the conductor, you're starting out of a station, the conductor might be at the head end and he'd give you a signal, go ahead, pick me up easy on the caboose. This is a signal for the caboose, also known as a crummy. They used to live in those cabooses, and they weren't very good housekeepers, so it became known as a crummy place to live. But that's the signal for caboose. So when we had cabooses, the conductor, like I say, might give you that signal. Also, when one train passes another train, the standing train, the crew always takes a position, one man on each side of the train, to give it a roll-by, what we call a roll-by. It makes a visual inspection of the train as it goes by. And your highball comes in again. When the caboose goes by, if you didn't see anything wrong, you give the conductor a highball. Or you might signal that he had a hot box, that he had sliding wheels or sticking brakes. Or maybe he had a bad order. Maybe it was near the head end, in the middle of the train, might have been near the rear. Conductor get very, very concerned if it's near the rear, because it's right in his area. So you get his attention. But now the conductor rides on the lead unit. So there's no caboose back there. So you give these signals, you relay with the radio. On the road, they have two channels. We have a road channel and a yard channel. And of course, the road trains are always on the road channel. Switching channel is just used around the yard. That's what we use. Not so much interference. But you can tell him this by radio. We also have trackside detectors that after the train passes, it comes on the radio with a synthesized voice and tells the conductor or the engineer or both that no defects noted, or it may tell them that they had dragging equipment, or a hot box tells them which axle, which side. In that case, then the train has to stop. And the conductor will have to go back and inspect that axle and at least 20 axles on either side in case of a hot box.
So this gives you an axle
Mm-hmm.
number.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
Is that individual axle?
Yeah. Correct. You have to know how many. Yeah, you have a consist of the train, and you know if there's any cars that have more than 4 axles. But in order to cover for that, see, some engines have 6 axles, some only have 4. And in order to cover for that, you will you have to inspect the 20 before and the 20 after, just in case that it miscounted. But what it does is, in the case of a hot box, it detects a difference of 1 degree or more in one side against the other. There's 2 sensors. Because different bearings run at different temperatures. So it detects a difference of 1 or more degrees, then it will tell you to stop. Yeah. Well, that's...
One time I heard it pop up an axle number.
Yeah.
Made comments that the brake.
Yeah. Yeah, the brakes will cause it too, because they cause a lot of heat. And if it's enough excessive heat, it will trip the hot box detector. They also have dragging equipment detectors, which are just little panels. And if anything is dragging and strikes those panels, then it will also tell them, it'll come on and say, stop your train dragging equipment. Sometimes the brake reading drops down, or chain dragging. These panels are all the way across the track and on the sides. We also have high, wide, low detectors, overhead clearance, all kinds of detectors. They are about 20 miles apart. The infrared, the hot box detectors are about 20 miles. The location. This is besides the rule book. This is our Bible here. This is this timetable tells you where all of the individual rules that are in the book apply to your particular part of the railroad. And in here you will find a location of every hot box detector, what type, and what it tells you. We have just a little bit more here. When a train is made up in the yard, it must have an air brake test. This is a train made up, ready to go. If you put the engine is coupled on, and train air brake system is charged to 90 pounds, and then they will give you a setup sign. This is a sign to set the brakes. It means set the brakes. Do it with a light, same way. They also do that when they're going to cut the air in. Make sure you don't, you know that they're going to be in between the cars. But this is when you're making an air test, this is set them up. They walk the setup, see that all the cars are applied. Then they'll give you a release. Light held high over their head. There's no doubt about it. The same with a hand. They hold their hand up high. That means release the brakes. Now, okay, you've made your air test. You're ready to go. Most yards you have to have a high wall with a green flag or a green light. I don't have a green light, but you can. This is to tell you that you are cleared to leave the yard. You can leave the yard now with a green high wall, but you cannot enter the main line without authority. So there's 2 or 3 different ways you can get authority to occupy and proceed on the main line. One way of receiving this authority is by signal indication. The aspect of the controlling signal must be either green or yellow for proceed. And of course, if it's red, you have to stop. Special instructions in this timetable will tell you what type of dispatching applies in each instance. Centralized traffic control and double track territory are designated also in this timetable, and after you comply with all the applicable rules, you can proceed on the authority conveyed by the signal aspect. These signals are called controlled signals. Used to be absolute signals, but they changed to a universal book of rules, and they changed it to controlled. It means the same thing, they just took the A off of them. They're controlled by a dispatcher from a central machine. As far as SP is concerned, they're all controlled from one building in Roseville. Sometimes they'll be controlled by a signal operator, but he will not clear the signal without the dispatcher's authority. So it's kind of a go-between there. One of the other ways right now that we have where we have light areas of traffic, we use a direct traffic control. It's kind of a modified staff system. If you've ever read some of the books about staff system, it's called direct traffic control, and these instructions are given to you either by radio or telephone directly to the crew. And there again, this territory is described in the special instructions, and he can give you authority for 1, 2, 3, or 4 blocks, depending how many blocks there are that you need and if there's no trains coming. But that's your authority, that's your exclusive right to that block. A block may be 10, 15, 20 miles long, depending on the territory. But there's always a siding at the end of it where you can meet someone at the end of each block. And that's really all I have. I appreciate all you guys' questions. If you have any further questions, otherwise, man, it's 10 o'clock.
Do you have any signal to give your conductor you received the message? You just hope you have.
Well, now, you mean...
When he signals you to say to back up or something like that.
If you go the other way, you know.
Well, no, you don't acknowledge the signal. On the radio, you do. Radio, the reason the rule says you can't use the radio is because there's a lot of chance to get in trouble. There's always a lot of traffic on this darn radio, and you do acknowledge. He'll say, if he says back up, he's got to tell you how far. He says back up 20 car lengths. If he doesn't come on the radio again, after you have moved 10 car lengths, you have to stop. But as far as acknowledging the signal, you move. You act on the signal. Well, you can give 2 whistles. That's 2 whistles are an acknowledgement of a signal. That would, but they don't like you to blow the whistle at them. So they'd rather have you move. If you don't move, they'll give you the signal again. A little nastier. Okay, Chris is giving me that look that our time's about up. Oh, okay.
If your man's left-handed, does he use his left hand for these signals?
Well, it doesn't matter. We'll take them with either hand, or usually they use both hands, but if they're hanging on the side of the car like this, holding on to a radio, and they've got a switch list in their hand, and a lantern, pretty busy. I was going to wear my overalls because most of them do carry their radio in the bib part of the overalls, so they can just push on this transmit button, and then most of the later models have a little extension mic that they can put up here, but they still have to press it to talk. But yeah, it doesn't matter if you're left or right-handed.
Any signals unique to Southern Pacific as opposed to any other railroad?
I don't know. I know I was in Europe a couple years ago, and I saw a lady make a cut off the engine and give the guy a little go-ahead sign. And I thought, well, I could have taken that signal just as well as that Swede did, you know. So I don't know. They must be pretty well universal. Yeah.
You have any other questions? Well, I have one, Jim. What's the signal for well done, Jim Dameron?
Oh, thank you.